Hello, world history students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 10, Section 3, The Kingdoms of West Africa. And the one thing I wanted you to kind of look at here is where these kingdoms are located. If you can spot the Atlantic Ocean, this is the part of Africa kind of located in the northern western part of the continent along the Atlantic coast. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is kind of the wealth and the rise of Islam that came out of this region. Some of the different kingdoms that are located here are the Empire of Ghana, the Mali Empire, and the Songhai Empire. So let's begin. In the first few centuries AD, camels were first introduced in desert caravans. Camels were really well adapted to travel in the desert, and that made them invaluable as far as moving of goods and people throughout the desert regions. Number two, salt was valuable to the sub-Saharan people because it was used to preserve their food, which would quickly spoil in the hot climate of the shale. Gold is obviously considered to be very precious, but there was a time when salt was probably more valuable than gold in this part of the world. There were different areas where salt could be found within the Sahara Desert. And again, these caravans of camels were vital to go into the desert to find the salt and to bring it back to the people. But salt is kind of the lifeblood of people who live in the warm desert climates. Kings were able to control the value of gold because they made a law that only a king was allowed to own large gold nuggets, thus limiting the amount available for trade, raising its value. Gold, even to this day, is found in areas of Niger, still being mined today, and hence its value goes back centuries. And being able to control the value and how much was mined, in a way, was a way to control the concept of surplus and shortages. Anytime there's a scarcity of a good, that has a tendency to boost the price of that good itself, and thus gold becomes a very valuable trading commodity. And around the year 1230 AD, the Mali Empire rose to power, and under Sandata Keita, he was the Mali's first king, and Mali prospered in trade and agriculture as a result of that. They started building large buildings, and as a result of that, they obviously became kind of vital when we talk about controlling trade in that part of the world. Characteristics of the African traditions, family ties become very important. Your extended family, your clans, your age sets, that's what we're talking about. Typically families, extended families, that would be your aunts and uncles and cousins, would kind of all live together, and hence over time, when you keep all those relatives nearby, you develop a clan. Age sets are basically people of a certain age bracket. So if we're talking about today, you might talk about it in terms of teenagers and young adults and your elderly. And with certain ages came certain responsibilities and privileges. Along with that, we have religion. Animism initially was kind of the form of worship, kind of a primitive form of religion where you believe that there's spirits out there in the material world. As time goes by, we're going to start seeing a movement from animism and really even ancestor worship towards an organized faith. And by the time we get to like the time of the rise of the Mali kingdom or empire, you're going to hear about Islam being kind of a huge factor in this part of the world. Oral traditions, this is the idea of spreading stories by word of mouth. And a lot of the history of this part of the world was passed along that way. As far as like writing things down, has actually only been kind of a more modern phenomenon. And hence, for years, a lot of people didn't know much about African history. And that's because of the fact that, because of oral traditions and the passing of stories by word of mouth, things kind of got neglected and weren't written down. And then finally, the arts, mask making, dance, music, all come out of this part of the world, and certainly have an influence on the modern day and age as we speak. So Mansa Musa introduced Islam to the Mali culture, and around 1324 he made his pilgrimage or Hajj to Mecca. Along the way, he offered things like clothing and gold as gifts, part of the almsgiving. And some people said that, as his caravan was traveling to Mecca, uh, there was so much money that he was able to share along the way, that the value of gold obviously became deflated after his caravan traveled through, because he had so much gold that he lavished. The value of that dropped dramatically, but he was very generous. There's no doubt about that. And his caravan was probably one of the most impressive that ever traveled to Mecca. The city of Timbuktu became renowned for its culture, along with that, its religion. Timbuktu, kind of the heart of West Africa, and Islam to go along with that. And then finally, education. Timbuktu was known as kind of an educational center in Africa. I mean, we've heard about Alexandria up in Egypt, but Timbuktu was kind of that in this part of Africa. Certainly, there were a lot of young people that came to Timbuktu to study, and its universities were very renowned at that point in time. Mansa Musa's show of wealth created problems for his country's future because European explorers had heard stories, and they came in search of the source of his wealth, and they tried to conquer the kingdom in order to steal its gold. The greatest achievement of the Songhai Empire. Now, the Songhai people came after the Mali Empire. Matter of fact, they're kind of located in roughly the same region. If you take a look below here, there's a map of West Africa, and you can see the city of Timbuktu there, and it's kind of surrounded in red. That's the Songhai Empire. And their big ruler was a man named Aski Muhammad. He began the Muslim dynasty there. He made his pilgrimages to Mecca, and the Songhai became a larger and wealthier empire as a result of that. Sunni Allah used a skilled cavalry and navy of war canoes to attack Mali. And Sunni Ali was able to maintain control of smaller kingdoms by replacing their local leaders with his own representatives who were loyal to him. Thank you very much.